Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic Re.Con, Testimonies from Reverts and Converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. Before we get into this week's episode, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to this channel and share these videos if they are meaningful to you, because it seems like subscriptions are just stagnating, and I would love to get more people excited about this and obviously get more and more testimonies each week and be able to keep up with this. So anyway, this week's guests are Peter and Deborah Mullner, who I met, you guys tell me, was that 2 weeks ago at church?
Yeah.
And here we are, and they gave me probably a 5-minute version of their testimonies. And I said, first of all, I loved them the minute I met them. But then when they told me their story, I said, I got to tell them what I do on the side. I would love for them to share their story. So anyway, both of you, I think, Deborah, we're going to start with you. I'd love to hear your background and how all of this came together.
Yes, so my background, my father comes from the Jewish tradition and my mom comes from the Christian tradition. So, and that made that I already as a very young age, already as a child, like say 7 years old, I would discuss this with my brother. He was one of the few people in the same situation as I was. And I would talk with him about questions of faith. We would discuss if the Jewish tradition is correct with just one God, and if the Christian tradition with that has also the Holy Spirit and Jesus. That was very confusing for us, and we would discuss that. I must say also that my father wouldn't go to the synagogue and my mom wouldn't go to church. So I grew up without being exposed to any form of religious traditions, but I still knew about the background of my parents. So I must say, when I became a teenager, I started reading philosophical things or Confucius or Buddhism and I once got the hold of the Quran, a German translation of the Quran, which is rare. I think it's not according to Islamic law that you translate the Quran, but I read it. And when I was about 17, I went in a youth group. They invited me to go to a retreat. And when I was sitting there in the retreat, I was saying, I'm a Christian. And, and then a young man said to me, you say you are a Christian, but you don't even know the Bible. And that made me think. I thought, he's right. It was very direct what he said, but it really was true. So I thought about it and I started reading the Bible. And I very soon felt very solid in the Old Testament. I felt very at home in the Old Testament. And I love the laws. I know not many people love the laws, but I love the laws. I think they are just reflect God's goodness and care for us. And we can learn so much about ourselves if we read the laws and what is important to God. So I was reading the laws first and creation, the laws. And then eventually I got to Isaiah. So I come to Isaiah, and there, Isaiah is Isaiah. I'm saying the right English word. And there, I read about the prediction that Jesus, the Messiah, would be born by a virgin and all that. And that really touched me because this was written so many centuries before Jesus was born, and it was so precise that I said, Jesus is the Messiah. He is the Messiah. And then I started reading the New Testament. I became more and more acquainted with Jesus, and I decided to follow him. I became a Christian. I literally became a Christian, and I started to going to a more like Pentecostal church. Would you say it's a Pentecostal church where I was with a lot of worship, and I was very touched by the worship. Yes, and then we kind of met. we met. about 20, yeah.
Yeah.
May I ask, how did you end up, once you realized, okay, Jesus is the Messiah, and you said you found yourself attending a Pentecostal church? I always have to ask, was it something that was near your house? Was it convenient? Did friends invite you? How did that come about? Do you remember?
I guess I started to get to know more Christians through the school. We were in a high school. We were actually in the same high school, but we didn't know each other. And there were Christian students there, and they invited me. And some of them knew this specific church. And what I always looked for is pastors that were really knowledgeable about the Bible and took the Bible very seriously, because it's my foundation, also my faith. Yeah. So, and that was a very, very charismatic pastor that really took his faith seriously. And so I decided to go to this church. It was convenient, relatively convenient.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Well, I'm Peter, and I grew up in a Catholic home, but we did not necessarily go very regularly to Mass. I think definitely we go at Christmas and Easter, and maybe a couple of times in between. But one thing that my parents made sure is that I attended Catholic education, and that was once a week, an hour. Either priest came to the school, or a vicar, or there was a training at in the schedule of the school, 1 hour per week, and from grade school through confirmation, basically. Yeah. And and then that stopped. I did get confirmed, and from then on, it was about Christmas and Easter, and I definitely was very distant at that time until we met, and I realized I couldn't go meet Deborah early in the morning on Sundays, but she would say in the afternoon, what happens? And I said, well, she goes to church. And like, could I come to church? And that was a Pentecostal church, which I've never been to, and it was kind of different than what I was used to. And people started singing and worshiping, raising their hands, and there was two things that happened there. One thing is that I looked around, I realized these people are actually worshiping God, and that was totally new to me, to the point that all of a sudden it hit me, and I just sat down and I cried, and I said, Jesus, I would like to follow you. And that was a very strong momentary impression. And the second thing that happened is, after the service, we walked outside, we did a stroll, and I started explaining faith to Deborah. And somehow, all of a sudden, everything that I have learned and I remembered from education became very clear to me, and it was very surprising. And so it was kind of the Holy Spirit teaching me in a moment, and so that set a little bit for us the direction in that we moved on. Since for me it was okay, it was the experience in a Pentecostal church, meaning yes, God showed up at that place and sent the Spirit and met me there and picked me up there. But it also, obviously, God had met me before and talked to me in through time in all these teachings, and while I was at Catholic Church, and I did not leave the Catholic Church at all at any time, but it was clear somehow these events happened, and somehow we were from then on attending both churches at different times in different intensities. Sometimes years, a couple of years, multiple years, only Pentecostal church, then a few years only Catholic church. We did get married Catholic, and so off we went and started our journey. We had 5 children in different countries. We moved from Switzerland to the States, to Germany, Switzerland, back to the States to come here.
Yes, we moved a lot.
And with each of these, as we moved, we were looking for new church homes, and that also played part. I mean, it was always important that we didn't have to travel too far. It should be close so that it's easy to go there and to attend. And we were always involved a lot with having Bible studies at our home, having help with some kind of ministries. So we were, I think, through the entire time engaged with this church and this faith. Yeah.
So you're saying that both, did they seem interchangeable for a little while, that you're going from Pentecostal to Catholic? Because some people obviously wouldn't see it quite that way, but in your case, knowing that you had that conversion experience, and
so one thing, it was for us important to not play Catholic and non-Catholic church against each other. I mean, we had, from the beginning, we had friends who said, well, the others are on the evil side, right? So it was really, really polarizing. And we felt like, no, that's not the way to go about it. I think Jesus is the center in the Christian universal church. And if you read the creed and read Catholic according to its original meaning of universal, you can read the creed in any denomination, and in many, let's put it in many, and many would say that is what we believe.
It was because you experienced God so strongly in a Pentecostal church, but I grew up in Brazil, and my earliest memories of the Catholic Church is that it is a church that really, they were the one who had the institutions that really helped people. My father was in Rotary, and they would try to organize things, but we would go. Why would we go? We would go to a Catholic school for blind children, or we would go to a Catholic hospital where poor children were treated. You know, it was always the Catholic Church. So for me, the Catholic Church I've always had. And another thing, the first people that ever talked about Jesus with me were Catholic nuns. They came to my school. I went to a private Baptist school. And these nuns came to our school, and it was in kindergarten. And I remember till today every single word that these nuns told me about Jesus, about the forgiveness of sins, and that was a very deep, strong thing for my life. And I guess the nuns don't know how powerful this little presentation that they gave was for me. It was my foundation, my only foundation that I had about Christianity. And so I always said, Peter, you don't have to leave the Catholic faith. This is a good faith. It is a good Christian faith. And you are the same way around.
Sure. Yeah. So it was when we write our yearly letters back home to Europe, to friends and family, and talk about this also a little bit in with some scriptures that we put on the header of the and also I remember once we put in there, well, we see ourselves as bridge builders in this a little bit between the dominant denominations also. And so I think it was important for us to bridge, not to divide in that area. Yeah.
But then something interesting happened. Our children, they know us quite well because they know us since they were born. And two of our children, most of our children are very devoted Christians. They really take it serious, their faith. But two of our children became Catholics. They started talking with me, saying, you should look into the Catholic faith. And when I would sit in the car that I shared with my children, I would turn on the radio, and it was always in Salt and Light radio. Salt and Light radio.
Salt and Light, yeah.
You know? they always, especially my son. My son did that. So I started hearing that, and I just thought, if my children that know me so well and know how serious the faith is to me, if they tell me I should look into that, I guess I should. And I looked and I started getting more and more involved in listening to the Catholic radio. And also we decided eventually to go to RCIA. Yeah.
Well, there was a time in between. I think before that, when we came to Boise, we attended for quite a long time a Pentecostal church here,
So when we came to Boise.
Yeah, that's that's right. So when we came to Boise, we started attending a Pentecostal church, but before we moved here. Yeah,
Got it.
And for me, it was going to Europe. I traveled quite regularly to Europe for conferences for business, and I often then just were looking for the next Catholic church, and we're going there. Mostly not, Mass was not on the schedule in there, but just to have some prayers and sit down, and I felt always very much home at that point. So for me, while we were active in the Protestant church, I feel I did not really lose my contact or my roots in the Catholic Church. Yeah. So,
but for Deborah, you, even though you had gone to those Catholic masses many times, you're saying that you hadn't researched what Catholicism is, and that's what your children were able to do, is kind of say, Mom, you need to actually dig into it, kind of that.
I must say the Catholic Church, the Mass, is very strongly based in many, many things that you read in the Bible, even from the Old Testament. And this I could always recognize. Whenever I was in Mass, I could find, oh, this is from the Bible. This is really solid Christianity. But I think it is only since I became a Catholic that because I could start eating, receive the Eucharistie, it really, that changed a lot in my faith. It is, I'm a very mystic person. I feel, I always, one of the things that I learned in the years that we lived here in Boise and we were in a Pentecostal church is really to be sensitive to the Holy Spirit. And then when I was in the 40s, I started to feel Jesus in my heart. And that's something that sometimes I just would quickly see a person and I knew I have to pray for this person. I call myself, I tell me, that's Jesus in my heart. You know, when I feel that you have to pray for this person, then I pray. So God was really working on me. But at the last few years that I was in the Pentecostal church, I felt like God was teaching me new ways of praying. And then I went to the Catholic Church, and then I started realizing that this is such a strong part also of the Catholic Mass. I was kind of prepared by God for the Catholic Mass, and I suddenly could find it there. It is weird to say, but it was like that. And I found this whole mercy, have mercy on us. That was something that I suddenly started saying, although nobody around me was saying that. It just came. So I can just say I'm very glad that I'm now in the Catholic Church. And I'm very thankful that I am in a church that takes the Bible so seriously. All the churches I went to, the people took the Bible very, very seriously. I'm not joking. I wouldn't have gone to a church that doesn't take the Bible seriously. However, the Catholic Church takes the Bible seriously since 2000 years. And there's such a richness in that. That it is through 2000 years, people devoted completely their life to Jesus. And there is just a wealth in the Catholic Church that I didn't know about. Although I went to Mass, but the Mass doesn't teach you all the richness of the Catholic Church.
Yeah. And what struck me, what you told me a few weeks ago, is when you said that your boys said, I forgot how you said it. I think it was just, Mom, you need to look into this, or something like that. And it hit me because how I wish that it were that easy for so many people. You want to be able to say, can you just research it and have that be the moment? Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll just, yeah. You know, that's what we wish, would be the fruit of this channel, that you could just go out and tell people, hey, just research the Catholic Church and be open. But of course, the Holy Spirit obviously has to be involved in those moments. And I think a lot of us and people that watch the show have family members, friends, they just haven't gotten that far back into history. They just can't see that. They can't see that the church has been around for 2,000 years. And in fact, I think there's a yearning for that, as we've seen. I'm sure you saw this as well. It's not just happening in Pentecostal movements or other 20th century movements, but a lot of people are trying to form home groups in an attempt to get back to the early church. I don't know if you heard that. We used to hear that quite a bit. Hey, everyone is just, it's too much. Let's go back to our roots. And we actually heard those phrases, and it was a matter of, let's go back to our roots and figure it out from the Bible. And as many of these the episodes that have been recorded, a lot of the guests will say, yeah, go back to the roots, read the Bible, but there's a little something that happened for the first 300 years of Christian history before the canon was finalized and received by the church. So you have to bring in tradition to understand what was the early church. So anyway, I digress, but I wanted to add that because I
not at all. I think what you say is it fits very well. Also here, the church where we actually met and where Deborah first went and where I had my conversion, they called themselves Gemeinde für Urchristentum, that means church for the original Christianity. And they wanted that, they had this as their corner, that they said, okay, we want to go back as it was at the beginning of the church, but did not make that context, well, that there's a line that goes from there all the way to the present, and it's the church, right? And it's but it's definitely it speaks very well to us what you just said.
Another thing that I would like to point out is the Eucharist.
The Eucharist.
Eucharist. I think it is very powerful. It is very, very powerful, and I think that to my surprise, I feel like Jesus is very close. It's very close when I am in the Catholic Church. It's crazy because I was always Christian, and I believe that Jesus was always with me, and that he was always a part of me. But it is so much more tangible, visible when I'm in the Mass, and it is since I started taking the Eucharistic.
Yeah. And then Peter, so you were in RCIA as well. Is that what I heard? That you went through RCIA?
Right. When there's a sponsor, right? And so I have to say I was pretty an amateur Catholic as a sponsor. Actually, I had it was a few years before that I actually had asked a priest down at St. Paul's at the Catholic Student Center at Boise State, and I asked him I would like to actually do something like this for myself, because I was not really practicing Catholicism, and B, coming from abroad. I mean, it is different. The language is different, but also there are nuances that are done differently, and so it's all of a sudden it's hard to connect, even though that the Mass has the same structure and everything. And so I wanted to do this. I felt the need to come closer and be more involved, and so when the time came, and we talked about it actually for a number of years before making that move, that we would like to do the RCIA, and I would like to participate as a sponsor. But I was there, I think, almost every time. And so.
And I must say the transition from the church that we used to be to to the Catholic Church was hard because we didn't have any negative sentiments towards our previous church.
Yeah.
We knew the pastor was a man and his wife also very, very devoted Christians. There was no question about they don't believe the right thing, you know, but we still felt we need to move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
How
So
was that? Did you find that a lot of those friends were understanding, or was it more of was it a bigger divide than you realized, or did it work out really well? How would you?
It's difficult to say, but I mean, two of our children still are part of the church, are very involved there. So we are not broken apart. We have been there a few times for a number of occasions, and I think the first time we met the people from the church was a little bit okay,
Sure.
We need to get closer together again, and but that was then very easy, and I think it's
good.
yeah, absolutely,
I think it's
absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
Respect.
Yeah.
That's good. What advice would you give to couples that are? I don't know how many couples are in the same boat as you were, but what would you invite them to do if they are unaware of Catholicism or unaware of Christian history, let's say? How would you approach that?
That is,
you know, it's difficult.
Giving advice is maybe not the right thing to do here.
That's the thing.
I think
yeah.
prayer and listening to the Spirit is probably the starting point, right?
But I think telling people what to do is never good. But actually, what made me start read the Bible was this young man telling me the truth, saying, "You are saying you are a Christian, you don't know even the Bible."
True.
You know. So I don't know. Probably I don't know.
I guess it's less about, as they say, proselytizing and more about evangelizing. So let me reframe it and say, what do you think is the best way as Catholic Christians to evangelize other people?
I think inside the family, that is also very important, how you raise your children. I think the most important thing is that you really take their relationship to God very seriously, that you don't impose things on them and say, you do that, and you go to church, but that you really show them that you respect them so much that you think that this relationship that you have with your God is very important. You know, I think that's definitely something that, and for
I think one thing is, I mean, living the faith outside of church, going into the world and proclaim, and by the way we live, and making it not only by the way we live, but also being transparent about it. And I mean, I think I work at Boise State. The environment is very liberal in the sense of which we know it, and so it's Christianity is not en vogue, but actually in that environment to actually display and be transparent and talk about it in just about what I do. Well, I go to church and what I go to a retreat. If I go, then talk about it and how we celebrate and what we do on Sundays, and be a witness there. And I think if they see it and if it resonates with them, how it matches hopefully somewhat with what we do, then I think that might give some direction. Then I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas?
No, I was going to say that Peter just mentioned it, that you would be willing to share the faith without fear of rejection. I think just the fact that you can't say, oh, this environment is not Christian friendly, so I'll just shut up. That doesn't quite make sense. There's a way to be able to stand firm in your convictions and be charitable. We talk about that a lot. There's a way to exemplify to the best of your ability what Christ would be like. You're not going to separate people. Oh, I can't talk to you because you don't believe what I believe. So I think what Peter said is spot on. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was, you talked about how you had never seen people worship God the way that they were in the Pentecostal church. The hands were lifted. I'm assuming there were altar calls. This just came up on the last episode that aired. So that experience, that initial experience where you saw everyone worshiping, how would you now compare that with hands down, mouth open, receiving Christ? How do you view those two things? And if you can put those two together.
I still love singing in church. And I would say, but I have to say, I really love it when sometimes at Mass, when the priest sings. I think this is phenomenal. And when the response is also with singing, takes a little practice, but we get into it. And I mean, the Gloria, if we sing the Gloria, or also Lamb of God to take away the sins of the world, when it's sung, it is so beautiful, right? And then it's so it goes so into the heart, and I could sing the entire Mass if I could. I cannot, but I think it would be wonderful. Yeah.
Perhaps it was also because we were Catholics in Switzerland, and Europe is not having such a good time with Christianity and Catholicism and all that. Europe is very dry, and it was, I would say, in the Catholic Church and in the Protestant Church, there was not much singing going on. And
why is that? I have to plead ignorance here. I mean, I can make guesses about why it's so dry in Europe, but what would you?
Well, I think World War II made a big damage, and particularly in the Axis powers, particularly, of course, Germany and Austria. My parents come from Austria. I think there was a lot of hurting in the church because of the way the church, the role that it played, was difficult and caused a lot of damage. And I think that is part of it.
I don't know exactly, and it was also that but you probably got a more foundational education in the church than I did, because you know better than I do. Yeah. But how was your education? How was your in the church?
Well, something was, I would say, now was helpful, but something was also very liberal and washed down, right? So it's
you mean like it was like two layman's, or what do you mean by like watered down, that just
watered down,
didn't have
that's
the substance?
Yeah. Watered down. What I mean is it's adapted to the worldly ways. Don't be clear and say, okay, this is sin. These are some of what Jesus teaches. The teachings of Jesus, I think we need to learn them as clear as possible, because they are very, I mean, the teachings are different from what the world does, right? And you cannot just
and your point,
be some wishy-washy type of thing, right?
They're absolute, so we can't be afraid to speak truth. And as people say, just the essence of speaking truth is going to offend. It's going to cause people to walk away. But stating truth, we should be able to do such a thing. And so you're saying that had a contributing factor. So
what Deborah said before about how to evangelize, I think you used the word respect, and I think that is a big word. It goes a long way, respecting the person with whom one does, and when we say this is the truth, this is what I believe, still inviting the other person to be the person that they are.
Yes.
I think there's probably that balance of clear speaking and inviting, that was not there at that time.
And I think if you have, this is probably easier said than done, but believe that if you have truth on your side, you should come across as being fairly calm and secure in your position, as opposed to what you're saying, where if you don't respect the person and you're kind of force feeding them truth, I don't know that I don't know in what environment that would work out well, because the person that has truth, partnering with grace and with the Holy Spirit, would hopefully, again, be calm and be excited to talk about such a thing.
And I believe also that actually people are thirsty for truth, and I just remember once many years ago we were at a party, sitting there, and everybody was talking with each other with different people, and somebody asked me something about faith, and I just started talking about it, and just in a private kind of setting around a big table, and all of a sudden the voices went down and everybody was listening, because I think it is because when you speak the truth, that's what happens, and so it's we shouldn't be afraid, as you say, of saying the truth, and calmly, and just it is the most natural thing. It is the truth.
But this was also in Europe, and I can imagine that these people that were on this table, they never learned really about God and Christianity. I think that's Europe for you.
I think we take that for granted, that so many people know the Christian faith. If you were walking around and, I don't know what the percentage is, but let's say 2 out of 10 knew the Christian faith, how would you approach the other 8? That kind of thing. And I also wanted to say, for the hunger for truth, back to what I said earlier about some of those home groups, like, I can't blame any of those people looking to go back, as they would say, to the roots of the church. That's a natural hunger. When you start to see, if you realize that a bunch of churches are splitting off and it's getting messy, and this guy's right, no, this guy's right, you're just wanting to remove that noise, even if you're contributing to the noise. My point is, if you're in that mindset, you're just saying, I just want to go back to when it was simple, because what is all this division? This is getting ridiculous. So I just wanted to add that, like, I don't blame them for that. I just can see that they are hungering truthfully for the trunk of the church, which is the Catholic Church. But they just can't articulate that, and they don't know it. So that's why we do this kind of thing. That's why we talk about the faith. So
one last thing, because I so Bible centered, I must say, one aspect of the Catholic Church that I'm enjoying a lot is that we have these additional books in the Bible, and I didn't know these books, and now that I became Catholic, I'm starting to read them, and I like them a lot. They are very useful, very good books that I didn't know for so many years. That's another thing.
Agreed. Well, anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
I think this was a lot already.
Yeah, we talked a lot.
It was fun.
Thank you for listening.
No, I want to thank you both for agreeing to this, and God bless you two, your family.
Thank you.
In both camps, and as you said, building a bridge and making sure that we can be charitable together, and
Thank you for having us.
Also witnessing to the truth. What you said. What was that? Say that again.
Thank you for letting us talk about our story.
Yeah. My pleasure. I think a lot of people are going to appreciate what you had to share. So we'll leave it there. Everyone, please share, like, comment, etc. Until next time, take care and God bless.